Welcome, everybody. We are ready to go. Our guest of honor today is here. His name is Walter, and he will be talking to us about how awesome he is in his role as an epidemiologist for the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. Please, Walter, if you would like to start talking about yourself and introducing yourself, we'd love to hear all about you. So go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us all about what you do.
Hello, everyone. Walter Barthel here. So I'm currently working as an epidemiologist with the Department of Public Health and Environment for Colorado. My current situation is as a contractor, not as a full-time employee, which has its benefits and like every situation has its pros and its cons. I have a little bit more flexibility for myself, but the cons is not really having all of the benefits that a full-time CDPHE employee has. CDPHE is Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So currently, as an epidemiologist, you're always in between a couple of projects at a time. One of my main projects is working with the Department of Corrections, in which we oversee 22 different state prisons, which are present in Colorado and distributed across the different regions of the state. Mentioning regions are sections of the state divided across counties, which have been planned out according to how much population is present to evenly distribute resources and efforts to be able to study and analyze the situations that are going on with a more equal view of it. Additionally to that main project of Department of Corrections, I'm also tasked with Region 2, which is the northeastern part of Colorado. We're about 8 to 9 counties that constitutes that. 2 of them large counties, which have, I want to say, about 10 million people, and then the other smaller counties, which maybe altogether might be like 1 million people. So that's quite a large size of population that we deal with. And every so often there's these little smaller projects that we work on that can vary from doing a simple analysis of an outbreak to doing a more thorough thought process to be able to analyze what would be a more optimal way of getting our goal, which our goal as an epidemiologist is studying what populations and how bad populations are being affected for COVID. Well, epidemiologists can work on multiple diseases. My current disease that I study is COVID. And then once we study the populations, we figure out methods in which we are able to better help surveillance and better implement tactics or operations to do more precautionary measures for the future. So one of the things that we have been studying is wastewater surveillance. That's not something I've been working on directly, but because of the projects that I've been working on, we've been able to get to that conclusion. What is wastewater surveillance? So wastewater surveillance is analyzing the concentration of the traces of COVID viruses within the used water or sewer system of a large facility. Sorry?
In municipal water as well, right?
Yes. So that's the first time that was used was in municipal water. But we're seeing if there are large enough facilities, whether that can be used as well. So if you have a facility that has 3,000 people, 5,000 people, instead of having to test every single one through the unpleasant experience of shoving a cotton Q-tip up somebody's nose. You can be doing this, and it can point almost equally as effective.
Okay, that's what the point of that was. There is some people doing that, and there was grants actually provided for doing wastewater COVID-19 surveillance in the valley there. So that's pretty interesting. So before we get into all of this nitty gritty of what it is to be an epidemiologist, let's go back a little bit and let's really introduce you, because I think that it's really important for students to know that you were one of my students many, many, many moons ago, weren't you, Walter?
I was. I was not the best of students. So when we re-met again at the local county level, I had a hard time admitting that I was one of your previous students. I was one of those students that would be at the back of the class, probably falling asleep most of the time. Not because you were not a good teacher, but I was just a terrible, terrible student, and I took my opportunities for granted. But I did have a blast on your teaching methods, which are way more open and way more fun, way more interacting. So I enjoyed that a lot. I can see you're still doing kind of the same methods through these type of events. So it's great.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you bring that up, because I think that people really don't, or they fail to understand that people who are successful, or others who are successful, I think that a lot of us think, wow, they must really have their stuff together. It's like, no, a lot of us started off as pretty goofy people who barely had it together. I mean, I see that myself too, because I was a really bad student. I consider myself a bad student too. I mean, I was the kind of student who, like, if I had a final or a midterm or any exam as an undergrad, I wouldn't really study until like the day of. I'd wake up at like 4 a.m, the day of the exam, thinking this is surely going to be enough time for me to learn all of the material before the exam. And you know, we kind of grow out of that, hopefully, but it's a very necessary part of the learning process. There's some students who are just naturally good students, that you have good apples that just know how to work and know what they want to do, and that's fantastic. But there are some of us who are just like, I'm just here for the ride. I'm just having a good time until I find something worthwhile to really put myself into. But it wasn't until I found, you know, evolution, animal behavior, that I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. And, you know, it was taking some classes where I realized, you know, maybe this is interesting, and maybe I do want to work hard at learning, because this is kind of cool. And it's not until you have that kind of moment that you realize that before, you might not have been such a good student. So you want to talk to us about that, because I think that both of us really are students who were lazy students. For the lack of a better word, we truly were lazy students. I know, because you were my student and I was myself a student. And we were able to find something that made us want to work just hard enough to get through. So maybe that's something of a theme that we can work on today, because I think that that's something that a lot of people kind of maybe might identify with, this whole, you know, I'm not necessarily the best student, but I want to learn and I want to be good. So how did you get to where you are? Because I mean, you've grown a lot, Walter. All of the time that I've known you, even from the time that we were at county, you've grown a lot. And I think that it's remarkable. And I think that you, having been one of my students and now being in the position that you're in, I think this is great. And it shows to other students watching this how totally possible and accessible success is. You just have to work as hard as Walter, essentially. So like, tell us about that. So at what point did you realize, oh crap, I should probably study for stuff? Like, when did that hit you? It probably wasn't taking my class, but when did that moment happen for you? Let's learn about that.
Yeah. So with the fact that you started studying the day of the exam, you were already a better student than I was. I was one of those students that would get to class and people would be freaking out, papers would be everywhere, textbooks would be out, and people would be doing a whole bunch of notes, and I'd be like, what's going on? And I would just sit down on my seat, and people would ask me, like, panicking, like, did you study for the test? Did you study for the test? And I would be like, there was a test. Yeah. So I was that level of student at one point. What ended up changing my situation was I met my now wife in fall of 2014, fall winter of 2014, and I met her family over the winter break. And so when she like introduced me to her family, she introduced me to her uncle, which at that point, or I mean, he still is a medical doctor in Mexico, and he was trying to move into the PA program over here in UTRGV in the McAllen campus. And so he had to retake classes and credits that were prerequisites for that program. And next, like spring of 2015, like right after the winter break, I'm walking into one of my classes, my introduction to statistics classes, and I just see this guy that's just staring at me and just points at me, and I'm like, and he tells me like, oh, I know you. And I'm like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? And then he tells me like, you're Ivana's boyfriend, aren't you? And I'm like, oh, blank. It's the uncle. And so that one semester I didn't want to look like a fool. I didn't look irresponsible and immature. And so I actually ended up helping him during that class. So I went from the previous semester, I took 4 classes and I had 3 Ds and 1 C. That was my lowest GPA point. I got to a point that maybe my GPA was like a 1.96. And then that semester, the next one, when I met her family and I was like with her uncle in the class, I got a B plus in statistics, and the other one of my classes were C's. And then I realized I was able to do something. I was better than what I had previously thought of myself.
That's wonderful. Wow.
Yeah. And one of the things that I did do, which I had the opportunity of doing, was I drove up to Houston. I took an aptitude test, like a professional level aptitude test, because I wanted to figure out what I needed to do with my life. And during that aptitude test, they showed me that I'm a very visual learner. I'm not able to just memorize something and regurgitate it. I need to actually understand it to learn it. So I changed my studying habits. So what I ended up changing is I started drawing everything. I used it for my business administration minor. I started taking it for my advanced biology credits. I started doing it for biochemistry, chemistry, math, everything, absolutely everything. And from there, that was really the big change. It was understanding my different study habits. Not everybody has the same study habits, and just understanding how you function changes everything, absolutely everything. And you don't need to take an aptitude test to be able to understand what your study habits are. I say just try different things and figure out for you as a person what is your best approach. Yeah.
Wow,
and I ended up
incredible.
graduating with like, I mean, still not the best GPA, but I mean, I took it from like a 1.96 to like I have it here written down, 2.7.
Oh, right.
So,
Go, Walter.
yeah.
Dude, like for real, that you telling me all of this makes me feel even that much more prouder of you, because you've come such a long way. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy that you were able to find some reason, some motivation, whatever it was, to work, to push yourself harder. And sometimes it is trying really hard not to look a fool, because I mean, I would get that same feeling as a graduate student too, where it's like, oh geez, I'm in somebody important's lab. I better not, screw
Yeah.
up. I better teach well. I better do my research well. I better do everything well, because I don't want to make them look bad and I don't want to
Yeah.
look bad. And I think
Yeah.
that that's something that's really important, that we don't really think about, how there are some people that really push us to work harder because we want to impress them. And sometimes we either let ourselves become intimidated by these people, or we allow that process to make us better. And I think that you really channeled the latter, making yourself better through that process of feeling like less than or something like that. And I think that's really important, because I mean, at some point, all of us go through that feeling where, oh, somebody is smarter than me, or somebody is more knowledgeable,
Yeah.
more everything. And it can be really, really demotivating. And it can really, be intimidating if you feel like, you have, for example, when I was a grad student, oh my gosh, my thesis advisor, when I was an undergrad, it was like, hey, it's all fun and games. But as a grad student, I felt, doing research now, I should know what I'm talking about now. And there was times where I feel like, oh, I'm not too sure about this, so I need to study before I can even go meet with this person. And
Mhm.
that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, because it makes you work harder to
Yeah.
improve yourself. And I think that that's something that we all should be aiming to find, somebody that makes you want to work harder so that you can improve yourself, so you can get to their level. And it's not in a I'm deficient kind of way, but you are growing kind of way. And man, that is just so remarkable that you were able to transform your whole way of approaching
Yeah.
study, learning, and responsibility, just because you didn't want to look a fool. And I think that's so remarkable. And we really need to I guess encourage more of this, because a lot of times I feel like my students might maybe feel like they don't want to talk to professionals, because maybe they might be intimidated, or they wouldn't even know what to say to them. So like in those situations, how would you say that you got by when you had to talk to somebody's uncle, who your Ivana's
Yeah.
uncle, who's a doctor? I mean,
Yeah.
did you get any of those feelings? Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So during my undergrad, graduate degrees were, for me, not a realistic expectation. I never thought I was going to go into a graduate degree. Um, so I had to think of a way into getting into a program that would allow me to get into a graduate degree. Um, so I started talking to different teachers. I spoke specifically with Dr. Marr, my biochemistry teacher. He was also my chemistry one teacher. I took biochem 1 and 2 with him. And I went to his office. I spoke with him. I told him what I wanted to do, and he was supportive about it, which he was great with. He actually wrote a letter of recommendation for me after I went to visit him a couple of times to his office. Um, so the moment that I started talking to professors was really at a moment of almost necessity, because I knew I wanted to get into a program, and you need letters of recommendations for those professors. And like you mentioned, like, yeah, you get intimidated. Everybody goes through that. But um, one thing to understand is that the professors want you to succeed. And especially like the time that we were in this at the county together, Vivi, like I could see how passionate you were about your students. And like your main goal is to actually help them and help them better themselves and learn, and for them to learn, and for them to be great, or as great as they can be.
Yeah.
Which shows you the other side. um, professors are people too. They're not this god whole person that is unrealistic to talk to, and if you talk to them, they'll just turn their face around and ignore you. No, like they'll help you out. And yeah, I did have that experience of thinking I am way too deep into this pool. I remember I want to say it was my either first or second semester of my master's in public health. The Brownsville campus is very, very small. And so there were a couple of classes in which I was the only student, and all of the other students were in either the Houston, Austin, Dallas campus or El Paso campus. And oh boy, I remember, I think it was my first semester in epidemiology. Everyone's introducing themselves and they're like, yeah, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, this is my second MPH, whatever, whatever, whatever. I already have a PhD and I just want to do an MPH. And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I going to say to introduce myself? And I'm just like, hi, I'm Walter, that's it. And that's what I went with. And then I was the only student in Brownsville. So my epidemiology professor, she would go and alternate campuses and ask like, okay, we're gonna go through these questions. These are the homework questions. And next class, we're gonna be answering them and talking about them. So she would go like, Houston campus, what's answer number 1? And then Brownsville campus, what's answer number 2? And for them, it was great because they had like 30 different students in their classes and any of the 30 students could answer. And then Brownsville campus, oh wait, not Brownsville campus, Walter. Like, what is the answer for number 3? So I just had to like be right on my toes all the time, putting attention. We also had in-class activities in which I didn't have anybody to work with. So what I ended up doing was the night before class, I started working through all the answers because I mean, I'm not going to be able to compete in real time with a class of 30 different people in which some of them are medical doctors, some of them are lawyers, and some of them already have a PhD. So I had to just prepare in advance to be able to not look like a fool in front of the whole class or whole course, because at that point, I mean, we're talking maybe it's about 60 students, 65, with no one to back me up in those situations. But it allowed me to have an experience in which the teacher would remember me like years and years later. We ended up going on a trip, a couple of graduate students for part of a program to Colombia. And one of the people from the group told me like, you're the guy that was alone in the epi class. And I was like, yeah, that was me. And she would tell me like, our teacher would talk nonstop about you. So it was hilarious to hear that the teacher was actually remembering me because I was the only student in the class. And it was just an ongoing joke that yeah, I was alone and had nobody back me up. All right, somebody asked, Damien, as someone who studies a field, is the discovery of new pathogens exciting or does it make you nervous? Oh God, I think it depends on the disease.
Oh my God.
So new pathogens. So if you're talking about new pathogens in terms of like an outbreak or a pathogen that's already known about but has recently resurfaced, that makes me excited. But a new pathogen in terms of a new COVID variant, for example, that makes me nervous. Why? Because whenever we're talking about a pathogen or a new variant, variants don't go back to a weaker state. They go and they become stronger and stronger, or more contagious, or some sort of evolutionary advantage. So, I mean, if we're talking about a virus that has a global pandemic, a pandemic that is to the magnitude that, I mean, COVID is, then yeah, that makes me nervous. But if we're talking about like, oh, I don't know, Taco Bell had an outbreak of 20 people. well, that makes me exciting because we're able to learn like what's going on and what the hell are they doing and why I'm not no longer going to go to a Taco Bell, even though I've never been to a Taco Bell. But
Yeah.
let's change it to Subway. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm no longer going to go to a Subway.
That was
Um,
definitely something that we learned about at the health
yeah,
department, where things came from, where these outbreaks came from.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Wow. Okay. Okay. Good questions. Does anybody else have any questions? Polo, happy birthday to Ivana. Oh,
I
that's
will. I
crazy,
will. Thank you.
Polo. Ah, wow, look at that. Wow. So Roxana, you know Walter, you know he's a goofball.
Yeah.
As professional as he looks in that picture, Walter is a very busy man. Don't let him fool you.
Yeah.
He's a very funny person. He made me laugh so often at county. We had a joke about how I'd say, "Damn it, Walter."
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good times. But wow, going back to you as a student, it's so remarkable to see you now in all of these different roles, considering I know, now knowing now how you started as a student. I think it's just so remarkable that you were able to overcome so much, mostly of ourselves, right? And to really figure out what it is that makes you tick. And apparently it's, not wanting to look silly. I remember this time as an undergrad, I was in a radiology class, and the professor called on me and I could not answer a question. And I remember feeling so like, oh my gosh, I was unprepared. I'm so embarrassed of myself. I will never be caught off guard or unprepared again. And sure,
Yeah.
that surely, obviously, that happened many times after that. But it's one of those things where you don't want to look silly, you don't want to look unprepared. And so that feeling of not wanting to look a certain way, really, it's a powerful tool and motivator for pushing one, isn't it?
It is. It is. But I just want to like make sure like having these feelings is also something that might be crippling because I know I went through that situation also early on in my undergraduate degree and that I kind of got to a point that I gave up on myself. Um, and just for anybody that struggles with that situation, don't don't push yourself lower just because of some inability to answer one question, or whether if you're called out and you don't know the answer. It's okay to not know the answer. We learned that plenty of times. um, I mean, I'm not gonna put specific titles or or people under fire, but there were cases in which people were asked these questions that they should have known, and they would not know the answer, and they would be calling on Vivi and myself like, what's the situation here, what's going on there, and we would just be like, well, this, but we told you about this like 2.5 hours ago.
Yeah.
And they would be like, no, 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 give me the answer written down, whatever, and give me an hourly update or some ridiculous thing like that. um and we would be like, okay. And then like after a while they would turn around, like after like giving them a daily update for like a week, they would be annoyed and be like, stop sending me all these emails, they're useless. And we would be like, okay, fine. So it's just, if you're looking for validation for somebody from someone else, it's very hard to get. It's something that is internal. And just having a mentality change can be a major difference. And it's something that I still continue to work on myself. And it's an ongoing, probably going to be a continuous process for the rest of our lives. But it is something that I highly recommend to start learning at a sooner age, because it can affect the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the sooner you start making good decisions,
Hmm.
the easier it is to correct the outcome. And I think that, it's really important for us. There's a lot of students who I think might be, thinking, well, I'm just here just to be here. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know what I want to do. I don't really have an interest in anything. So I think that, talking about how finding your direction is something that you can do despite, having all of this understanding. Like, you weren't a doctor, you weren't ready for a lot of what happened during your MPH, but you made the best out of that situation because you wanted to improve, you wanted to grow. And so you forced yourself to study harder, to be the only person who was in the class, so you had to be prepared. So you pushed yourself to grow, and you took advantage of the situation. I think that that's something that we need to really learn, that's a thing that we can do. I don't think that we ever are told, hey, you're going to struggle a lot, and if you don't have the right mechanisms for studying or for responsible work and how you approach it, starting on projects immediately as they're assigned, not the day before they're due, things like that. If you're able to keep all of these things in line, the likelihood of success increases. And I think that we need to tell students, it's not something that people are born doing. Like, nobody's just born, like, there are some weird people who are born organized, who are born successful, and who can just look at something and know it for the rest of their lives. But I think that the majority of us are just struggling to get by. And I think that it's really encouraging when you say to us, I, was the kind of student who didn't study, who didn't even know there was an exam that day. And you were able to find something that was able to push you to get to do the things that you found you wanted to do. And I think that we need to encourage students more to think about things in this way. We are going to struggle, and you might not know what you're doing for a long time, but when you find that thing that makes you go with it. And I think that you're such a wonderful example of that. And I mean, I was a cagapalo student myself too. So I know. That's why I really appreciate having you here, because you're a success story, and you need to be shared with everybody. Because you make success attainable, you make it accessible, you demonstrate that it's just a matter of working hard, because it might not be something that's innate within you to know something, but if you work hard enough, you can get there. And you're a brilliant example of that. So I'm really, really happy that we're able to talk to you today, Walter, and that you're able to show an example, to be an example for the rest of the students here who maybe might feel the same way as we did as undergrads. So I'm really grateful for you being here. I hope that students are realizing, wow, it is, I'm not alone in being so, lost. I think that's one of the things that I hope students get today, that they're not alone in being lost. Most of us are.
Yeah.
So anybody in the chat, does anybody identify with this? Can anybody say, yeah, that's how I feel as an undergrad, or, can anybody identify with this, or contribute to this? Marcos says yes. So how so, Marcos? Like, I know that Marcos is actually working out of Danny's lab, so he's got his own sets of important figures to impress as well. So Marcos, do you want to tell us about your experience and that kind of feeling?
Okay, I think he might be typing.
Yeah.
If you want to unmute, you're also more than welcome.
Yes, absolutely. Feel free to unmute, to speak, join the conversation. This is a very casual, open conversation. Anybody feel free to jump in, ask your questions, and we'll address all of them.
Yeah.
All right. So while we wait for
There he goes.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hold up. I need to take care of something, but I'll be right back.
Okay. All right, so we'll have Marcos tell us about his experience. Does anybody else have an experience that they'd like to talk about? Maybe, feeling like, they have this kind of a similar situation or anything that you'd like to share before we move on?
I would like to know if somebody from the chat or that's present here is thinking of or is in the current process of applying to graduate school, whether that be a master's, a PhD, MD, dental, PA school, or otherwise.
Yeah, if you are, just go ahead and say me or list what you're wanting to apply to as a graduate program. Mm,
Uh,
any-
I'm still a sophomore, so I have a lot of time, but eventually I think I want to apply to grad school.
Okay. Have you thought about like what type of a situation or what type of role you want to end up in?
I'm not too sure yet, so
Okay.
that's sort of the problem. I do like the lab work, but I don't know how far that goes. That makes sense
Yeah.
because a lot of like the professors that are successful no longer really work in the lab. They're more like overseers.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like I would get a graduate degree and then go into industry, but I don't know how that looks either.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'd
Yeah.
assume to continue doing lab work, I'd have to get a graduate degree.
So if you want to continue lab work, I've also looked into positions and roles that are in the private sector, even in the public sector. There's opportunities for lab work if that's what your main interest is currently. And there's plenty of jobs, whether in the biotech, pharmaceutical, hospital, or government. Even nonprofits also have lab work positions. So something that I really suggest, and one of the things that really helps out as a resource is LinkedIn. If you have a LinkedIn, that is great, and you would be able to start researching what are the larger companies in the field that offers that type of position. Like if your interest is lab work, you're going to be able to see what are the larger pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, and LinkedIn also offers the opportunity to be able to see what internships or entry-level positions are available and what requirements they ask of you. A lot of positions simply ask for a bachelor's, not really a master's. It's a good way of having an entry level. If you're having doubts about going into a master's program, that's completely understandable. Everyone has their own reason for getting into a master's program. And I mean, I would always suggest trying to get it into a graduate degree. It improves your probabilities of success that much more. But looking for internships is critical, and opening your network, sending invites to people, connecting to people that can later, maybe for example, if I would be in your position, like Vivi because of being in UTRGV, but then she might know me and I might be working at a pharmaceutical company that might be able to have a position, and I might be able to refer you for an internship position at the pharmaceutical company. I would love to be able to help you out in that situation. I don't think I know anybody in the pharmaceutical industry, but I mean, that's what having connections and networks is for, to help each other out at the end. We all want each other to succeed, especially when we're all UTRGV alumni, graduates, or students. That's something that I'm taking myself, I want to make something out of the name of UTRGV. A lot of friends of mine that went to larger universities like UT or Texas A&M are like, whatever, you went to UTRGV. And I'm like, oh, hells no. And I'm having that internal mission of like, you're gonna see one day you'll see. So making a name out of UTRGV is something that would already push any of us, hopefully any of us, to help each other out. But I really, really, really recommend internships. Internships help a lot. If you're not able to get into an internship, there's also volunteer opportunities. I know there's limited amount of internship opportunities in Brownsville, in the Valley. That is something that I'm also trying to work on. There is an online volunteer resource that's called Catch a Fire. It's all together. I'll put it in the chat. Oh, I can't spell. Look for that in Google, and there's going to be a lot of different volunteer opportunities that you can do remotely. So the original posting or the company that's posting it might be in San Francisco, Seattle, Washington, DC, Chicago, New York, whatever. But they're asking for volunteers to put an X amount of time into a project that they want to implement. And that opens opportunities to people that physically might not be able to get an opportunity because of the limited resources that are in their community. So I would recommend that a lot if that's something that's possible with you guys.
Yeah, that's something that you guys really need to start looking into, especially when you're juniors, sophomores and juniors, because I mean, most internships do happen over the summer, so it's kind of hard to do it as a sweet graduating, senior. But internships really do open doors for you, and it's kind of difficult, I think, especially in our culture. I remember when I first started doing internships or volunteer work, my mom would be asking, "Y te van a pagar?" Like, are they going to pay you?
Yeah.
I'd be like, "No, mom, but this is how you start working. You have to work for free before you can actually get stuff, like get a real job and stuff." And she's like, "It doesn't make sense to me." And in a way, like, she's kind of right, but not really, because the value of an internship isn't monetary, it's in connections. And that's what I think is really important for us to understand, that when you're in college, when you're at the university right now, it's not about the classes, it's not about the grades, it's about the people that you meet, because these connections, these networks that you establish are going to be the people that are going to be helping hook you up with a job later, who are going to be able to, for example, if you have a random speaker series that you put together all willy-nilly, these are going to be the people who are going to be speaking at your series. So it's a good thing. It's a very powerful thing to be able to network, because these people are going to be like the people that you reach out to. You want to know one of everything, right? You want to know a good doctor, a good lawyer, a good everything, so that in case you need something, right? So this is really important, because networking is so critical, and so few of us want to do it. Like, we have this rancho attitude where people are super shy and they don't want to go out and say hi to random people, and it's something that you need to become comfortable with doing. Success is pretty much pinned on having good mentors and being able to network. If you cannot network, you cannot get out of the bubble that you're existing in. And so networking is critical, and you guys need to practice networking. You need to get out there, establish your networks now. And the university has all kinds of opportunities for traveling, for conferences and all of these things. Take advantage, go to internships. That we always circulate on the listserv all kinds of opportunities for traveling conferences, for research conferences, for different kinds of networking opportunities. Apply to them, and most of these are funded, so apply to them. And conferences are really fun. Scientists really know how to have fun, but really apply to these things, because that's how you build yourself and your network, and your worth is really it really, I'm sorry, guys, it really is who you know. I'm sorry, it really is, unfortunately. And so
Yeah.
get to know people, good people. Like,
Yeah.
it's great that you have your friends and that you guys get to hang out and stuff, but get to know people that can help you too. And it's not for the purpose of, oh, I need somebody who's going to get me into this position, but for the purpose of learning from them, because you can't just become a doctor overnight. You can't just become an whatever overnight, a scientist overnight. You have to associate with the people who are that, so that over time you pick up their qualities and you become that. It doesn't happen overnight. So you need these networking connections so that you can be able to pick up on things like that. So that's a really good point that you bring up, Walter. Thank you. Um, so if you guys really are looking for internships, that's something that we can help you find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to add to that, like, I understand being a still student, you might be asking, like, how do I even start? Where do I even start with a connection? Or like, where the hell do I even begin to figure out who can help me? Go to your teachers. Your teachers help a lot. They know a lot of different connections. They know a lot of different programs. For example, Vivi just mentioned a program that in which they do funded travel to conferences. I didn't know about that until just right now. And like, that's amazing. That's a great opportunity. Don't be shy. If you want something, go and take it. Don't wait until somebody gives it to you. And the other is, like you mentioned, the rancho mentality of like, I understand that. Yes, like in a way, there's a way of like, you're proud of doing something yourself,
Yep.
but nobody is successful alone.
Mhm.
Nobody, even the most successful people in the world, they didn't get to where they are by doing it themselves. Everyone's a co-founder. It's never just a founder. Even
Right.
Bill Gates, even Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, all of those people didn't start alone. They had partners helping them out.
It's true. It's true. I think that's a really good point that you make there too, because oftentimes we feel like, well, I need to do it for myself, and it's like, well, we don't succeed alone. It's just something that we need to become comfortable with. You can't know everything. You can't remember everything. You can't learn everything. So you're going to need to learn how to work with others and rely on others, and to work as a unit, because it's the only way things get done in the real world. Nobody can carry a whole team by themselves. Nobody. And that's something that I think we really need to get comfortable with doing, being okay with, relying on somebody else. And that's really uncomfortable. I know even people in group projects, oh, I don't want a group project because, other people aren't reliable. And it's something that we have to adjust within our society. We need to be reliable to each other and to ourselves, because it's the only way that we can move forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And going back on internships, guys, did you know that most internships in science are really well paid? I did an internship maybe 2012, and it was one of the better paid ones. For 10 weeks of work, I made $5,000 for just 10 weeks of work. That's 2.5 months. Like, science is really well funded. If you get into well funded areas, usually it's disease, infectious disease is really well funded. Animal behavior, not so much. But if you go into areas that are really well funded, you're taken care of. I think that that's one of the other reasons that people should go into STEM careers, because people want scientists, physicists, biologists, mathematicians. They're in demand. So right now, what you're doing now, picking up all these skills, going through classes, this is valuable. You could be making yourself a very valuable person just by learning right now. And so I think that, we need to continue to promote these things, internships, networking. These are valuable growth experiences for students to embark on, so that they can not only grow and expand their tool set, the tools that they use for communication, for understanding, but to grow a network that they can utilize later for, things like this, having a speakers, or, whatever it is that you will need to do in the future. being able to set up those things for yourself now is really important. So that's something that I encourage you guys to look into. Internships, any kind of research work, any kind of networking opportunity, really. That's what you want to be doing right now. That's what your college time should be spent doing. If I could tell myself anything, if I could go back in time and tell my, freshman student self anything, it would be that spend more time networking, because that's where the difference is, really. Yeah. And I would also tell myself not to eat so much Burger King. Those freshman 15
Oh,
were really tough.
no, can't relate. I would not tell myself that. I would eat. I would say to eat more.
Yeah, you're skinny. Yeah. Thank you so much, Walter. Students, does anybody have any questions? Anything that you'd like to ask Walter? We've talked a lot, and I want to get some of your thoughts on this. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat. I'll wait here a couple seconds. Wow. So Walter, what do you have to do after this?
Meetings after meetings after meetings. Kind of the day of an epidemiologist. While we give people time to be able to write questions down or mentioned or state something. I do want to say, if your GPA or your resume or something is not the best, try to look for alternatives. I didn't go into my master's program straight into the master's program. I began by doing a graduate certificate and then showing them that I was capable of taking the master's level classes at that campus. And then I applied to the master's right after that, and I connected the two. And I did not have to take more classes. I took the same amount of classes that everybody else. And it secured the probabilities of being accepted into the program. And it helped me connect with teachers in the program that later were able to get me a job in the university. So I recommend doing that. A lot of the times those certificates do not require an excellent GPA or a great GRE or GP or GRE. Yeah. Or GMAT or whatever. So thinking of external opportunities, but be careful of figuring out which certificate programs can have double dipped classes into the master's program. So the one I took was the basic core of classes and courses in which are part of the master's program. That was my graduate certificate. So once I basically completed the core, I applied to the master's, and I was able to complete my master's through that process. And it gave me that opportunity. I think if I would have not done that, if I would have not started with the certificate, I would have not been able to take my master's, and my career would have had a very different pathway.
Wow, that's a really important thing that you bring up. I didn't even realize that was an option. And I don't think that many students know that, let's say you didn't have a great undergraduate career, but you now have figured out where you want to go, and you don't want to go back and do everything. So that's a really good kind of avenue to take in lieu of retaking all your classes, and it demonstrates that you are capable of taking these courses at that level, and it demonstrates your growth as well, because you can compare to your undergraduate performance, and that's really powerful. Thank you for bringing that up, because I wasn't too familiar with that, and I don't know that students were, so thank you for pointing that out, because I think that sometimes we feel more trapped than we are. And that there is a very good out strategy. And I think that more people should be taking this avenue.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, Walter. Well, we're kind of drawing towards the end of our hour here. So if nobody, does anybody have any last questions for Walter? Any thank yous, any thank you, good job, you were great, kind of.
Yeah, I don't need, if we need more time, that's not an issue. If there's any question, we can go into the questions. It can be personalized situations, advice, or whatnot. I'm just gonna give people enough time to be able to write something or unmute, and again, we can have that open up. One of the things I also recommend is learning how to use tools. An undergraduate degree will give you the knowledge of understanding what the situation is, but tools are important. Knowing how to use Excel is critical.
So much so.
Critical. Yeah. So I think Saul already spoke here. So Saul and myself, we worked on developing a system or a program for the county, which, I mean, by the time I moved to the state of Texas and then to the state of Colorado for work, I ended up finding out we were this close to having like what is being used pretty much across the country.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. And you guys made that from scratch. And I was really close by. I saw.
Yeah. That is one. The other thing I recommend is, especially in the sciences, learning data analysis tools. So something like Python, which can be very, very difficult, yes, but the sooner you learn it, the better you can get. And then you become a pro and you become indispensable. They will pay you crazy, ridiculous, stupid amount of money for that. Another program is R. Another program is SQL. You don't need to know all of these, but you should know at least Excel and a very, very basic understanding of one of these other programs.
Yeah, that's, you guys, for like, Walter is not joking. You can get paid so much if you know how to operate some of these obscure programs. And we're not joking. It's because we're in this really bizarre interface where a lot of the work and analysis that has to be done is based on technology. And it just so happens that most of the faculty that are really, far up in the chain of, being, are older and are not so comfortable with technology. So we need to capitalize on this and utilize the fact that we are able to use technology well and capitalize on that, because we can learn how to use these programs. And then, like Walter said, you can get paid obscene amounts of money because you know something that someone in a higher position doesn't know. And that is really valuable. So I cannot stress it enough. As graduate students, we had a group that was like, all right, we're going to learn this today. All right, next week we're going to learn this. And we started trying to learn Python as well. And it's just something that you have to find time for. You have to force yourself to make time for things like this, because they're tools, and your tools, like every good pencil, like this one needs to be sharpened. Otherwise, they don't work very well. And so if it's not a sharpened tool, the same thing. If you're not practicing, Python, if you're not practicing speaking, if one of your skills is sign language, if you're not practicing signing, your tool is becoming more and more blunt. Again, like this bad pencil. And you want to maintain your tools sharp. So that's one thing that I think we also need to keep in mind. Your skills are tools, and you must sharpen your tools every so often so that they still work.
That can, like, knowing those skills is something that can make your career or your job from earning 50,000 to earning 120,000. Like, it is a big monster change.
It is. It really is. And,
Yeah.
and not only does it mean you make more money, but it means job security. If the older people around you don't
Yes.
know how to use technology, but you do, you're safe. And
Yes.
you don't have to worry about getting fired or anything like that. So job security, if not for all the money, for the job security that having a particular skill brings. So I
Yeah.
encourage all of you, go out and learn one random skill that no one else can do. And you'll see how much more valuable, like how much more value you have as a person for having that skill, that rare skill. So I encourage everybody, go practice something random and new.
Yeah. I would recommend starting a club or a group if you and keep each other accountable for learning that particular skill, and kind of
Yeah.
like a gym buddy, but for technology or some other skill set.
Wow, that's actually not a bad idea. Maybe we should have an accountability skill club, a skill learning club that encourages accountability for the learning. I wrote that down. This might happen. This is pretty much how Bridging Gap started. We were just, talking at work one day, and we thought about something like this. And I said, wow, this would be something really cool to have happen at school whenever I go back one day. And,
Yeah.
not too long later, a little under a year later, look at it now. It's a real thing that,
I know.
speak at. So I'm really, really grateful that
Yeah.
we were able to have that conversation and that we were able to make this happen and that you were able to be a guest after having first been my student, Walter. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of where you're going. And now you're going to go be a consultant. So
Yeah.
Walter, I'm so proud of you as one of my pollitos from way back in the day when I was a young graduate student. I'm so proud of you and the rest of you students that are here. I am so excited to see what you do and where you will go, because I want to see you succeed. That's like Walter said, it makes me happy to see you guys doing well and to see you guys succeeding. It truly does bring me joy. That's what I want for you guys, and that's why I work extra hard to help bring to you more tools, more information, so that you guys are able to take advantage of that, because I feel like I was given a lot and I feel like it's time to give back. And so hopefully you guys will feel the same way when you get to where you're going. So thank you guys for joining us. Is there any last questions? I think people are ready for lunch.
I know. Yeah.
All righty, then we'll just call it for today. But thank you so much, Walter, for joining us and for being such a good example of what a student can be if you have the motivation to change and to push yourself. So thank you so much for being such a good example of what it is to turn yourself around, to turn that boat around, and to be just the most that you can be. Good job, Walter. I'm so proud of you. Keep at it, Walter.
If anybody wants any more advice, any more conversation, any questions at all, do not hesitate to either ask Vivi for my contact information or add me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and that'll help out. Vivi is somebody that is very passionate about her students. Have her as a resource. She is great. She has a lot of different connections in a lot of different fields. Take advantage of that. She wants to help. I mean, I saw her literally crying several days at the county because she was so passionate about her job. And she was, when this whole bridge program was being discussed, she was crying and talking about, like, we have to help our students more. So she is very passionate about it. And
I remember I cried so hard. I'm crying now. Thanks, Walter. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I did. I remember that because oh my gosh, as a student from UTRGV, I know that, like, I think I've mentioned this before. I recognize the situation we're in. I mean, when I was an undergrad, I swear you guys, I was like when I was graduating at my graduation, I was sitting there just terrified that somebody was going to be like, come up behind me while I was sitting in my chair and like tell me, Mija, you're not supposed to be graduating today. You didn't learn enough. I was so scared. And, you know, it's just being able to be here to help you guys. I recognize that there's a lot that we didn't get as undergrads, that I didn't get as an undergrad. And so I want to do my part to help bridge that gap for you, because so thank you, Walter, for that. Wow. So a lot of people said thank you for the meeting. It was inspiring, good advice. So thank you so much, Walter, for taking your time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. Thank you so much. And we will send you your congratulatory thank you so much for this, says Hector. We will send you your congratulatory Bridging Gaps certificate and official letter for a participation. So thank you so much for taking your time again to help us here. So for Walter, we have your letter of appreciation and a certificate for your participation with us today.
Thank you.
Here's the PDF.
No worries at all.
So
it's a pleasure. It really is a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I can't wait to hear from you again. We're going to have you back on for the next talk in the fall. So thank you so much. And everybody have a wonderful rest of your day, and take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Oh, Marco says you should have your own Bridging Gaps. Oh, to me, to you should have your own Bridging Gaps, Walter.
Oh, to me.
Yeah.
Okay. That's something that I am currently working on.
Oh no, to me, never mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, this has been great. And I think that, you know, having had this become a real thing, I think has been so positive for me, because it was just an idea. And every time that we have these, I feel so animated by the talks that we have, that it makes me want to put more things together, more of my ideas. It makes me want to like really make them come to life. So thank you so much for just making this so wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, guys. Bye, everyone. Have a good lunchtime and a good rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye.